Good morning. We're going to be learning now a Sicha, which is printed in Chelek Yud Ches. It's a Shavuos Sicha, Sicha Beis, page 35. Aleph, Moshen Fil Mol Geret, as mit dem Zman von Shavuos haben a Verbund Aleph. Moshe Rabbeinu, durch wenn es ist geben geworden die Teda und Shavuos. Beis, David HaMelech was David Meis Batzeres, und der Baal Shem Tov was Euch seine Stalkos is given Shavuos. So we spoke about many times that the time of Shavuos has a connection between, number one, Moshe Rabbeinu, through whom the Torah was given on Shavuos. Number two, David HaMelech, who passed away on Shavuos, as the Gemara says. And number three, the Baal Shem Tov, who also passed away on Shavuos. So obviously there's some sort of connection between all three of them. Befrat, wenn es redt sich wegen Urois in Sheiches mit Jeden Bechlal und mit Gdeli und Yisrael Befrat. So, since everything is with divine providence, Hashgacha Pratis, especially when discussing events relating to Jewish people in general, and these great leaders, as moving as understood, Aleph, as is da, eine Kude Mishutefes zwischen sie, was der Fall sein, sie alle verbunden mit demselben Tag. So number one, there's a common connection, there's a common thread shared by all three leaders, and that's why they have a connection with the same day. And number two, when Beis, as the Nekudim Mishutefes hat Zusammenbund mit dem Teichen Ikri von dem Tag, dann Chagashuas Man Ter. So number one, it has a common thread. All three have a common denominator between each other. And also this common thread is related to the day of Shavuos, which is the giving of the Torah. Now, the Idach muss aber euch sein, achidisch in ot der Nekuda Mishutefes, wie sie ist bei jedem einem von die drei Nesi Yisrael. Jeder von sie ist beloschen Hashas Tzricha. On the other hand, even with the common element that they have, each of the three leaders has a unique facet. Each of them, as the Gemara says, is like a necessity. In other words, each Moshe Rabbeinu brought a certain chiddush to the world. David HaMelech brought a certain chiddush to the world, and then of course the Baal Shem Tov. Base from the Nikudas Mishutofis from Moshe, David, and the Baal Shem Tov is was jeder von sie is given nicht nur HaMelech v'Nasi b'Yisrael nor in dem Gufa Arisha in dem Sug from Melucha Nesiyah. So one of the common elements that Moshe, David, and the Baal Shem Tov have, each of them, not only were they a king and a nasi in Klal Yisrael, but they were a first in the form of how they were a king and how they were a leader. What does that mean? Moshe Rabbeinu was given that erste nasi of Ali, and Moshe Rabbeinu was the first nasi. He was the first leader of Klal Yisrael. Befrat like the Psak Rambam as Melech Haya, and especially like the Rambam Paskins, Moshe Rabbeinu was not only a nasi, he was a king. Is Moshe Rabbeinu given that erste Melech beim Yiddischen Volk. So according to the Rambam, will come out that Moshe Rabbeinu was the first king as well. Not only the first Nasi, but he was the first king as well. Now, David is given the Reish for Malchus Beis David. David HaMelech was the first of the kingship of Beis David. Was Kivan Shenimshach David, Zocha Bekeser Malchus, as the Rambam says, that once David HaMelech was merited to the crown of kingship, so him and his descendants have this forever. Loy ulevanav haschorim ad elam, like yikoras hamluchim mizer David elam, as the Rambam says over there, that this monarchy that David HaMelech has is never going to be seized, and it's always going to be in David HaMelech's from his children. Now, on the page 36, on the Baal Shem Tov is given their erster from the Nesiya Chassidus HaKlalis, and the Baal Shem Tov was the first leader from the Chassidic movement. On der Mitte ist verstandig die Sheiches miyuchades von die alle drei Malchi und Nesiya Yisrael in sehr Nekudim Mishutefes zu Matan Torah. Now, on this basis, we can understand the connection that each of the three kings and leaders have with the giving of the Torah. Weil von den Yonim Ikrim, was haben sich aufgetan bei Matan Torah ist gewesen, was jeder Yid ist geworden a Teil von Mamlechas Kenim Sodom. Because one of the breakthroughs that was achieved by Matan Torah was that every Yid became, as the Pasuk says, a kingdom of priests, which are officers. Und dem Keach, if zu kennen, a race bringen, das Begilei nimmt jeder Yid von den Nesi Yisrael, and jeder der Kedel Kaman. Now, every Yid, he derives his power to actualize this koyach that was given to him from the leaders of the generations, as the Rebbe is going to explain soon. So what we accomplished in Beis is we're saying that what's the one of the common denominators between the Moshe Rabbeinu, David, and the Baal Shem Tov, which they were a melech and a nasi, but not only a melech and a nasi, they were a king and a leader, but also they were the first in their kind, which means Moshe Rabbeinu was the nasi of all the Yidden, and as Rambam says, not only was he a nasi, he was a melech as well. David HaMelech was the first melech of Malchus Beis David, and from there the monarchy didn't stop. And then the Baal Shem Tov also was the founder of Chassidus. And now we can understand. So that's all the common denominator between them three. What's the common denominator, and what connection do they have with Matan Torah? Because one of the chidushim that Matan Torah accomplished is that the Yidden became a kingdom of priests, officers, and how do we have that koyach to bring it into actuality? This is through having a connection, and through, like the Rebbe is going to explain, Barichas, with Moshe, David, and the Baal Shem Tov. Gimel. Die Sheiches von dem Ingen von Mamlechas Keinim zum Antera wird man verstehen durch Mervarzen dem Teichen Ingen am Melucha. So the connection between this concept of the kingdom of priests and the giving of the Torah can be understood by first explaining what's the concept of kingship. The Nikuda Ikris von Malchus is Hisnasus. So what's the core of kingship? The core of kingship lies the idea of Hisnasus, exaltness. The Melech's Hecherkeit von und Abgetragenkeit von the ganze Volk. This is the way that the king is elevated and he is detached from the entire nation. Bis as sich nicht herablassen zu tun melucha. Not until to the extent as the din is that he's not allowed to do work. The king is not allowed to work. Darf ihm zustellen alle seine Tzurachim mit größer Archava. K'moshe nemar melech b'yafia techazanei necha. So all his needs of a king has to be provided with great abundance. As the pasuk says, the king in his beauty shall your eyes behold. Keiner und kein Zach in der Medina can nicht abhalten den Melech von durchführen sein Ratzon, which means that nothing is able to prevent the king from fulfilling his will. K'maimer Azal, as the Gemara says, HaMelech paid it together, as the famous saying goes, the king can break all fence. Ve'ein moichem biyadav, and the din is that no one is allowed to protest the king once he wants to break any fence, or if a king has to get through a certain area and he has to break your fence, your private property. The halach is that he's allowed to. And Amar Malchusa, another saying that when a government says or a king says akar tura v'chuli v'eit, that a king is allowed to uproot the mountain and so on. And the giving of the Torah also accomplished a similar impact. Durch Matan Torah is geworden berei mamtanu. Yidden seien der Heuben geworden über alle Völker. Bis als seien geworden Herrscher von Welt bechlal. Nicht unterworfen die Gidrei HaTeva. So what did the giving of the Torah accomplish? It accomplished, first of all, that berei mamtanu, Hashem exalted us. Yidden became elevated over other people, becoming even higher than the world itself, and basically higher than the realms of nature. So again, what's the idea? The idea of the king is hisnasus, that he's higher than the world, he's elevated than the world, he is separated from the world, and like we know, a king is not allowed to work. And that's the idea of Matan Torah. The same idea is that the Matan Torah automatically brought the Yidden higher than all the nations, and were not subjugated by the realms of nature. Now, the Rebbe says in andere Wörter, what does that mean? When Yidden sein äußern tzenish l'mokim, sie führen sich al pi Torah und mitzvos b'shleimus. When a Yid acts and does the will of Hashem, and he conducts himself with Torah and mitzvahs, then is nicht nur was sie bakumen dein alle sehr tzrachim barchava. So not only does a Yid get everything that he needs in abundance, nor nochmer, even more so. Sie darf nicht chayr sein, zereya sein v'chuli. B'lachte nasa seidei achedim, which means that not only does a Yid, not only do they receive all their needs in abundance, but how the more so, they don't need to plow, they don't need to sow, all their work is done by others. In der Aveda von jeden befragt meint das, what does that mean to the spiritual service of an individual Yid? Wenn es kommt zu Tana Zach von Tene Mitzvahs, darf sich ein Yid fühlen wie ein Melech. Which means that when a Yid comes to actually perform Torah Mitzvahs, a Yid has to conduct himself like a king. Darf sich abgeben mit der Mitzvah, Punkt, wie wollt nicht gehad, keine andere Melachas Verdeiges. Was bestellt into seine Tzrachim Barachava. Which means that a Yid has to wholeheartedly devote himself to the mitzvah exactly as if he has no other work or concerns, just as someone who is fully provided for with abundance. Kein tevedike cheshben soll nit abhalten von zu tun a mitzvah. Weil in Yonam von Tene Mitzvah is a Yid a balabas a melech ev teva, which means that a natural calculation should not prevent a Yid from performing a mitzvah. And when it comes to Torah mitzvahs, a Yid is like the Rebbe uses the expression, he's a master, he's a balabas over nature. Und wenn a Yid geht zum Kiyum Torah mitzvahs mit der Tnua von Mamlechas Kenim, now when a Yid approaches the observance of Torah mitzvahs with this mindset of that we're Mamlechas Kenim, kingdom of priests, fährt es durch nicht b'derech Milchama, mit der Yetzer Hara und mit Dvarim HaMevalvelim, nor b'derech Menucha. He doesn't engage in a battle with his Yetzer Hara or with distractions. He's calm, nor b'derech Menucha. He's relaxed. Hebt sich auf Hecher von der Welt herum, wissen nicht, als ist von Mamlechas Kenim, als hat Melchatchila nicht kein Mevalvelim, which means he raises himself above the world. He's a part of the group of a kingdom of priests, so that from the Chatchila, from the outset, there's no cause for anything which distracts him, any anxiety, because the Chatchila, he's going with the mindset of a king. So what the Rebbe is explaining in Gimel, that in order to understand the Shaychus of Mamlechas Kenim to Kei Kodesh, let's explain what's the idea of Melucha. So he says that the idea of kingdom is Hisnasus, is you're elevated, you're higher than the nation. And as we know that a king is not allowed to work, everything has to be accomplished through his work, has to be done by other people. And not only that, but he basically, nothing can stand in his way. And that's one of the accomplishments of Matan Torah, that it made us Yidden higher than Teva. So when we do what Hashem wants, not only does Hashem give us an abundance, but also Malachten Nasas Aidei Achenim. And Laveda, what does that mean? That when a Yid does a mitzvah or Torah mitzvahs, he has to do it in a way that there's no anxiety, he doesn't worry about anything. He's holding at the level that he is a king. Okay, Dalet. Now, a Yid can dachaber fragen, a Yid can ask, Bishteme, wenn zeret sich wegen sein Pnimis an Hashama, was ist Hecher von Slapschuss in Guf, ist verstandig, als kein Sach von Welt und Gashmis kann ihr nicht mehr wabel sein, in dem verbunden mit den Ebersten durch Asiyas, Litzene, Vikim, Mitzvah, Mitzvah, Malchus, Shalom. So the Rebbe says, mainly when it comes to the Pnimius of Neshama, which is higher than being actually garbed in a body, so it makes sense that nothing of Gashmis can interfere with his connection with Hashem by carrying out the Litzene, Vikim of Hashem. Now, da Retzichaber wegen der Neshama von Ayidin, wie sie es melubisch in Guf und hat zu tun mit den Jan Ha'elam. Was seinen im Magbil Mavabel. Ta, wie kann man monnen bei ihm, als soll sich aufheben Hecher von den Slapschuss und mitten an Emes. So the Rebbe asks a very practical question. Here we're discussing a Yid whose neshama is clothed within a physical body, and he's engaged in Gashmis, and at the end of the day, he's limited. So how can you demand from this person that he should transcend all the limitations of the world? Mainly the Pnimius and Neshama. Okay, fine, the Pnimius and Neshama is not subjugated to Welt. But at the end of the day, let's be realistic that a person is in a body. A person has to deal with Gashmis. So how could you demand by the person that he shouldn't have anxiety, he shouldn't be thinking about his work, etc., just be in a way a level of a king? Or the answer to them. So what does the Rebbe say? What's the answer? What's the solution? The solution is as in yeder der and da nesiya yisos. The Rebbe says that how do you attain this level is the fact that every Yid, every generation has leaders who possess the quality of hisnasus. Was they haben in sich die Tchunas from Mamlechas and Nesiyas, they have the qualities of kingship and leaders. Und sie geben jeder Yidem Keach, herauszurufen bei sich Begoli, akaponim ein von die Tchuna von Mamlechas Kinim. So it's the Rebbe that empowers every Yid to express openly the quality of a kingdom of priests. So what we accomplished in Dalit is that, like the Rebbe says, a person can ask realistically, how is it shaykh for a person to live this level and to be on this madriga of being a melech and just, melachtes nasa sayidei achirim, who you're fooling. So the Rebbe says that this is very shaykh to attain if, who gives us the kayach? In other words, how do you attain this? Is through connecting to the Rebbe of the generation. Okay, the Rebbe says in Hey, Vibalas Meisha David, when the Baal Shem Tov was given Yeden Nasi von Melech, so since Meisha David and the Baal Shem Tov were all leaders and kings, was the Ribber gefunden by Zeh, Nesef of Ashiris Varchava in Gashmis, you find that in addition to the fact that each one, David and Meisha David and the Baal Shem Tov were very, very, they were very affluent, they were very wealthy. Oich Mamshala Ushlita Ifteva, by Zeh is given Anoga Shlamalam Nateva. So in addition to the fact that they were wealthy and affluent, they also ruled and controlled nature, and the fact that their interactions and elements were like supernatural. The ganze Anhage was Moshe Rabbeinu hat geführt Yidden in Mitzrayim, and Midbar is given by Ifenissi. The whole, when Moshe Rabbeinu led the Yidden in Egypt and guarded them through the desert, Moshe Rabbeinu had displayed a miraculous conduct. Euch zu David HaMelech hat der Eberster nach Hanan gewissen Nisim in Iflois, wie man Zettes in viele Tfilis, V'hidois in Sefer Tehillim, you find that David HaMelech, Hashem performed miracles and wonders, and you see this in Tehillim, that David HaMelech sang words of gratitude in the book of Tehillim. Und eine Anhage von Full mit Nisim und Ifleis ist doch gewähnt bei Baal Shem Tov. Was das ist bevor es von die Sipurim von Baal Shem Tov und Talmidiv, bis es Allah Shem B'Teir HaRogel, euch bei Amad Bar zu anrufen, jeder Meise Pella, Abashemske Meise. And it's also known that the Baal Shem Tov was renowned for, that he had also Nisim and Iflois, and as we know that the stories that are publicized by his Talmidim, and as we know there's a saying going, that this is a Baal Shem Tov, a Baal Shemske Meise. So we see that Sai Moshe Rabbeinu, his Anhaga, that he led the Yidden was higher than Teva. David HaMelech also, he had Nisim higher than Teva, and Baal Shem Tov also, the way he conducted himself and everything was, you read the stories of how the Baal Shem Tov traveled, it was all higher than Teva. It's the middle, okay, yeah. Baal Shem Tov Meisa. Okay, so this skip, I don't know what's this page doing. Okay, 38. Und von sie nicht mehr geworden, und durch dem wird es gala bei jeder Yidin Yonei Melech. And it's from them, that through them, that the qualities of kingship will be manifested.
It should be the last page.
Right. Okay, it's a printing mistake. And revealed within every Yid. Okay, let's do one more. Vav. Zu verstehen dem Inyan, was jeder von jeder von Sai, Moshe, David und der Baal Shem Tov ist maschpiert zu Yidin, darf man früher mehr wahr sein, wie der Gile von Manteda hat sich in sich drei Inyanim. So, in order to understand this unique ways of Moshe, David, and Baal Shem Tov, how he influenced the Yidin, it's necessary to first explain how the revelation of the giving of the Torah has these three facets. Number one, der Etzem Hisgalos Elikus bei Manteda ve'ayerd Hashem al Har Sinai, was is given in ganzen Hecher von Teva in the Welt, und das is given nor lefisha. First of all, you have the revelation of the godliness of the giving of the Torah. Hashem descended on Har Sinai, and it was entirely beyond the worlds of nature, and as we know, it was only temporary. Number two, die Tetzah von Pu'ula von der Isgalus in Welt, als euch nach dem beim Sheikh Hayev und Estalke Schchina, es ist nifsa geworden im Gilei, Kief Manteres, aber durch dem ist dachig geworden die Teva von Welt, als mit Kanal Haba soll sein geringer in zu Megala sein an Erliki. Number two, that the effect that this revelation had after we know that the Shofar blasted and the Shechina left, the revelation of the giving of the Torah ended. However, the nature of the world became refined, making it easier to reveal Hashem's light. And Gimel, der Tachlis von Antera soll sein der Chibur Elyon v'Tachtin, or Blashan Atanya, Macher von Elamaza Gashmer Tachtin, Shin Tachtin Lamata Mimenu, Adir Le'Yizbarach, that says, as ich nem Hela Ma'elam, wo setzt sich nicht on Ken Elikus Chas V'Shalom Cheshach Chofel Mechupel Shuhu Moli Klippus Yitzcharacha Sheneged Hashem Mamash Leimar Ani V'Av Seid Zalayid Arab Trag and Gile Ere Lekif Manter. And then you have a third. The purpose of the giving of the Torah, which we know was to connect the higher and the lower realms and the lower worlds, as the Tanya says, to make a material world. And to take the lowest world and make it a home for Hashem. This means that even in the world of there's a cheshach kafel mechupel, a yid can draw down a revelation of Hashem from the giving of the Torah. And the Rebbe is going to connect that tomorrow. We'll learn with